Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, and it's always fun to welcome back to the show our co-host, Christy Piddick from PackYourPixiedust.com. How are you doing today, Christy?
I am well. How are you?
Not too bad. You survived your weekend in New Orleans and had a wonderful Mother's Day yesterday, didn't you?
I did. Both of those things occurred. A nap, rather, definitely occurred yesterday, and it was a great weekend. I am a little tired today. I will let you know that in advance.
Did you get out and see some of the sights, or I know you were at a wedding?
Yeah, so a little bit. I mean, and even just getting to, because everything was all in the downtown French Quarter, real close to that area. So yeah, it was great. Very vibrant city.
Yeah, I really want to go down there. Like, I think we've talked about that several times. I want to go down there as an adult.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, speaking of weddings, really excited about this topic. I didn't even know how I found her website, but I was kind of playing around one night on the internet trying to think of different topics that we could bring to the show. And I found Lindsay Coulter Photography. And Lindsay is a photographer up in Canada, and she had an opportunity to shoot a wedding on the Disney Dream. And we'd like to welcome to the show Lindsay from up in Canada. How are you doing today, Lindsay?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it was kind of, I reached out just on a whim to see if you'd be willing to come on and do this. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your experience photographing a wedding on the Disney Dream.
For sure. My pleasure. Thanks so much for reaching out. I loved your email. When you first reached out, you were like, this is a long shot. And I was like, I don't know, not that much of a long shot, I guess. I'm going to say yes. So,
well, let's just kind of jump into it a little bit. You're up in, I believe, near New London, Ontario. Is that where you're at?
Yeah. I'm like right in between Toronto and London, Ontario.
Okay.
In a place called Waterloo.
Is that kind of a suburb of Toronto? Just out of curiosity, I've never been up there before.
It's just under an hour away from Toronto. It's not quite a suburb, but it's like a very vibrant tech community in KW. We are the founders of the BlackBerry. So yeah, there's like a very serious tech community happening up here in Waterloo.
Well, I saw some of the pictures that you've taken, and I'm guessing that a lot of them are around that area. It just looks like just a magical, beautiful place up there out in the countryside and whatnot around that area.
Yeah, we're very lucky. It's a very vibrant city, but also a really, really great countryside, like a huge farming and Mennonite community actually just on the outskirts of the city. So we're very lucky that we get kind of the best of both worlds, especially from a photography perspective. It makes my job very easy.
Definitely. Well, speaking of photography, why don't we get a little bit of background about yourself? How did you get into photography, and how did you start to build your business?
So I got into photography about 7 years ago when I met my now husband, Taylor. He was a wedding photographer at the time already. And when we first started dating, he basically said, like, if you ever want to see me on the weekends, you're going to have to pick up a camera and come to some weddings. So I spent the first summer that we were dating kind of just tagging along, going to his weddings, and then I just realized that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I started out mostly as a wedding photographer. Now I kind of do weddings, families, babies, commercial work, and lots of travel for all of that stuff as well.
So let's jump into your, I guess, travel element of weddings. How many destination weddings have you shot?
Well, I would say when I first started shooting weddings, I really loved traveling a ton for destination weddings. So I think at the peak, I probably was shooting 6 to 8 a year on top of shooting about 50 weddings locally at home. So, a fair amount considering I'm usually gone for about a week in between that. I usually try to travel with my husband or with another photographer just so that I have somebody to spend the week with as well. As you can imagine, spending 6 to 8 weeks away from home can be a little bit challenging. So I have really narrowed down the number of destination weddings that I will take on. I like to only shoot unique locations with great couples that I really gel with. So I probably do 3 or 4 a year now, which is a lot more manageable. And it's also just really lovely, like getting to travel with your couples and getting to know their families and their guests. And everything that goes along with a wedding day that's usually crammed into 10 or 12 hour a day. Now I get to experience that for an entire week with them, which is really cool.
So I have talked about it on this podcast before. I have been addicted to the Disney Wedding podcast, and she just talks about different Disney weddings. So they have a bunch of Disney brides on, and they've done Disney Cruise Line a couple of times. And obviously Disney Cruise Line is unique because you're on, and they're mostly on the Dream, these weddings. You're on a cruise for 3 to 4 nights, and you have to fly to get there, and you're there. So how does that work in terms of, I get the pricing if you hire the Disney photographers, but then I guess they don't understand who it is and the pictures, that there's not this connection. And obviously your bride's going to have a connection with you. How does it work for payment?
So that's a really great question. And honestly, every single photographer works differently. Some photographers will charge their regular full rate package that they would charge for a wedding at home, in addition to travel and the rest of the time that they're spent on the cruise line. For me personally, I have a custom package for when I'm traveling with my couples. So I do charge them for travel from Toronto. Basically, I usually just try to charge like an all-inclusive rate. So it's not like the most complicated thing in the world. I'll just tell them, basically, this is what it's going to cost for me to fly down, for me to stay in a hotel the night before the cruise leaves, for the cruise itself, and then also for any coverage on the wedding day, bachelorette parties, rehearsal dinners, all those kinds of things all wrapped into one neat and tidy package. So it can feel, I think, a little bit overwhelming at first. The thing that's really important to know, not just with Disney cruises, but for any destination wedding, most of the time couples are incentivized to bring a group on a trip. So they may get certain special rates for a number of rooms. So if you bring on 30 guests along with you on your cruise, then Disney may incentivize you with a couple of discounted rooms or like heavily discounted rooms. So there are ways around it that make it sometimes even less expensive than the photographer on the cruise itself that Disney provides for you.
Which they're pretty expensive anyway, the Disney photographers.
They are. And you know what? Rightfully so. Disney photographers are very talented. They're really great at their jobs. But like you said, you don't know who you're getting until very close to your wedding day, if not, the day of your wedding. Usually with destination weddings, you book a package, you know how many hours of coverage you're getting. They'll show you a portfolio of images that may or may not be shot by the person that's actually showing up to shoot your wedding. So it can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're spending your entire wedding day with someone. You want to make sure that your personalities mesh, not just that you like their photos. You might see somebody whose work you love, but that their style of shooting is totally off from what you want. I'm not a super posy photographer. I don't like to go over the top and make people take portraits for 6 hours of their wedding day or anything crazy, but you really never know what you're going to get when you just book someone as part of a package. So that's why, the other bonus is that usually clients that will hire me for their destination weddings, I'll do their engagement sessions as well. So I'll go to LA and do their engagement photos, or they'll come to Toronto if they're from this area, and we can do their engagement photos ahead of time as well. So there's a little bit more of a rapport rather than me just showing up and following them around for an entire week of their wedding.
Right. And even at a minimum, you can still speak to them ahead of time, which you wouldn't do if you had a Disney photographer.
Definitely. And there's a lot that goes into the behind the scenes of planning someone's wedding day, of making sure that I have their itinerary in order. Usually I help my couples create their itinerary to make sure that they're going to get all the photos that they're hoping for. Some brides are very particular about the getting ready photos that they would like, and, the photos that they would like even on the days that aren't the wedding, on, the family photo days that they might have ahead of time or after the wedding. So there's definitely a lot that goes into it that's not just showing up and taking pictures. And I think it would be difficult to just have somebody pop into that role for one day and then you wait until you get their photos back.
So I'm curious, when I got married, my husband and I had no idea of even what to ask for. Do you prefer people that know what they want, or people that just say, please do as with me as needed?
You know what? I am happy with either of those options. I think, a happy medium of either of those would be great. I don't necessarily want somebody that's coming into it with a photo list of 150 specific photos that they would want. But at the same time, it's always nice when couples have an idea of what they're looking for, or at the very least have done their research and looked at some photographers so that they know that the style of photographer that they're hiring is the right one for them. I would never want somebody to be surprised when they look at their photos later and be like, oh, shoot, this is not what we expected. So I think as long as people do their research, look at some other photographers before hiring the person that you've set your mind on, and knowing the types of photos that you're hoping to get out of it. Doesn't necessarily have to be specific, like a shot list, but just a general vibe of like, I really love candids, or, you know, we want to make sure that we get some really cool photos of us and the venue, whether that be Castaway Cay or the cruise ship itself or whatever it is. It's always nice to have a general idea, but not so much like, and then I'm going to put my hand here and we're going to do this exact pose, because that's just like expectations and reality will never, ever mesh up when you are that specific.
Since we're kind of on this topic of, you know, the destination weddings, you had been on a cruise before with Disney on the Wonder before you went on this dream cruise. Is that true?
I had, yes. So I went on the Disney Wonder with a bunch of friends and my husband. It was just a quick cruise from San Diego to Ensenada. It was actually surprisingly cold. It was like a 3-day cruise and we were wearing sweaters the whole time. But it was so much fun. And my husband and I had done a cruise before with another cruise line who shall not be named. And it was totally fun. But just once you get the Disney experience, it's completely different, right? Like everything from the room to the restaurants to the entertainment is just on a different level. So I knew that I wanted to do another Disney cruise, but I didn't really have any plans to do so until I kind of got this call like, hey, we're going to get married on a Disney cruise. Do you want to shoot this? And I was like, oh, perfect. My dreams are coming true. I get to go back, have it not be freezing, and also get to do my job, which is really fun.
And no pun intended, you were on the dream.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? I was so excited about the Disney Dream because we had seen it in a port another time. And I was like, does that thing really have a slide that goes off the side of the ship? And that was truly like adult kid dreams coming true. Like that was so much fun.
Did you go on the slide?
Oh yeah. And actually the groom and his groomsmen, the morning of the wedding, went on the slide, and my second photographer that came on the cruise ship with me photographed the whole thing.
Oh, that's funny.
So that was really fun.
So I guess my question is, since you've been on a cruise before, how do you, when you're doing a destination wedding, now you'd been at least on one Disney ship, how do you kind of research where you're going to do some of the shooting? I mean, obviously there's going to be the venue wherever they get married or wherever they have their ceremony, but how do you research, like, if you're going to LA or wherever it is? What do you have to do ahead of time to kind of think about the types of shooting or types? I'm not sure if I'm saying it that right way. The types of photography you want to do.
For sure. So, I mean, I try to always kind of just go with the natural flow of the day. I don't try to like over direct photos by any means, but obviously I like to have a plan in place of where we're going to do things and when. Most importantly, like where are we going to have family photos done? So typically I'll do family photos in the same location that we do the ceremony, just to keep things simple. One of the unique factors of getting married on a Disney cruise, specifically Castaway Cay, is that after the ceremony, the guests will then be shuttled back onto the ship. So it's not like they're spending the entire day on Castaway Cay, and it's like, you know, people aren't just like hanging out in their bathing suits. They're taken from the ceremony. There's usually a cocktail hour before the ceremony, and then after the ceremony, they're taken back onto the cruise ship. So then it's up to us, like, okay, so who do we keep on Castaway Cay? And it's usually just the wedding party for a little bit, and then I just keep the couple. I try to keep in mind what most people are going to hang on their walls and put in albums, and it's usually just the photos of the couple that make the final cut for those types of photos. So that's where I try to invest most of my time when we are working with a bit of a schedule. Obviously, the ship will leave. So we only have so much time. So for the wedding that I shot on Castaway Cay, we did the family photos right after the ceremony, some bridal party photos, and then I just kept the bride and groom. And from there, The Disney Cruise Line staff are super, super helpful because they know what locations are going to be helpful. I obviously did some research ahead of time to say, okay, actually, I looked and, if we go to this beach, we'll be able to get a great shot of the cruise behind, like the cruise ship behind them, which would be really cool and unique. But for the most part, I just kind of try to scout out locations as we're going, which is always fun and exciting and just keeps things a little bit more unique than me just recreating photos that I've seen online. But really, that's with any destination wedding and honestly, really with all weddings that I shoot. I don't try to over-plan them or pick out locations or anything too much ahead of time. I just try to go with the flow. And then if my couples have a vision, Colette and Johnny, who are my lovely bride and groom that got married on the Disney Dream, had actually already been on the cruise once before. So they were able to say, okay, like there's some really great locations around here, but it's kind of a collaborative effort, to be honest.
So before we talk about some more of the specifics of this wedding, and we need to eventually put it out there also, all of this is online, not just from your site, but from Colette and Johnny. They have a separate site as well. Why don't we find out, you've got a kind of a unique background as to how you got into just becoming kind of a Disney fan like Christy and I. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So a few years ago, I was starting a travel blog with my husband, Taylor, and I knew about this girl, Leslie Kay, who lived in the same city as me, who had started a blog called Disney Bound. And it's a pretty big deal in KW, but I don't think I quite realized what a big deal it is in the Disney community and internationally much further than Waterloo. So I wanted to reach out to Leslie to say, hey, I want to talk to you about doing Disney as an adult. So I reached out to her. She and I weren't friends at the time. I didn't really know her. I just knew of her. I sent her a message saying, do you want to grab lunch? I'd love to talk to you about this for this blog that I'm writing. The next day, we got together for lunch. And during that lunch, we became best friends and decided to book a trip to Las Vegas together 2 days later. We literally all left 2 days later.
Wow.
So very fast friends. And from there, I kind of just became entrenched in this Disney community. Can't really be friends with Leslie and not be a part of it in some way. So we had gone to Disneyland together. I got to know some of her friends that live in LA and around Disneyland, which was really cool. Such a great community. The Disney Bound community is so amazing. And through her friends and her Disney Bound community, that's how I met Colette and Johnny, who are the lovely couple that got married on the Disney Dream. So when they got engaged, they reached out to me and said, hey, you're a wedding photographer. We hear you travel for weddings. And I was also familiar with their style and the whole Disney vision that comes along with getting married on a Disney cruise. Obviously, it's not just a regular wedding. It's going to be a little bit more extra, which if you look on Disney Weddings, their Disney Weddings blog or Disney Style, you'll see just how extra their wedding was in the absolute best way. They had a matching getting ready outfits for all of the bridesmaids, and the bachelorette party was so cool. And all of it was on the cruise ship, which was really fun.
So when somebody's going to get married on a Disney cruise ship, and I'm not sure if you know this, Lindsay, who did they talk to beforehand? Or do you know, Christy, as far as, because obviously there's got to be somebody on that works with Disney Cruise Line that sets these up. The cruise that we just went on back in March, there was actually a wedding on board. They had it in Ooh La La, and they had the ceremony there. And their whole party was on board. We saw them at Castaway Cay having a great day, a couple days later. But do you know who somebody reaches out for? Either one of you guys?
There's a whole Disney wedding department. And so in the land, people actually work with the cruise ship people, but it would be like getting married at Disney World. So they have, and you get them depending on what level of wedding you pick, because Disney has 3 different price levels of the type of wedding you can get, where you can, pick every little element, or there's a few that are just 2 of them that are just packages where you just pay and you get this, and this, that type of thing. So depending on your level, you also will get a Disney planner or just the regular staff members, I guess, at the Disney wedding. But that's how that works.
Yeah, and it was actually really interesting to see how sort of the inside of Disney worked, because until this point, I had just been a fangirl of this is cool, how interesting this would be to work for Disney. But being on the, I guess, team side of things, where I was not necessarily a guest of this wedding, but I was working at it. I got to see how their team worked. And Colette and Johnny had a very large wedding. They had a bunch of guests. So they had one full-time planner, Alex, who was amazing. And he was from sort of the mainland office for Disney weddings. And then they also had a representative from Disney Cruise Lines that helped liaise on the project to make sure that everything was going smoothly for them, and that, you know, everything from start to finish was exactly how they wanted it to be from both a wedding and also a cruise perspective. Because they're not just, when you're planning a cruise line wedding, you're not just planning a wedding, you're planning a trip away for all of your guests as well. So making sure that your rehearsal dinner is scheduled in the right place, and all of your guests know, you know, all of the details of the different get-togethers and parties that you're going to be having throughout the week is very important.
This is kind of blowing my mind, I guess, how big.
It's quite the production. Honestly, it really is a production. Getting to see the ins and outs of it from a Disney side of things, because obviously, you know, any wedding can vary in size and production level from small to large. But I think even the smallest of weddings from a Disney perspective is probably going to be a production in the best way, right? Like Colette and Johnny had fireworks, and they actually had, they actually had, Colette and Johnny are really big gamers. So they had I think they were from Kingdom Hearts. That's what it was. Donald and Goofy from Kingdom Hearts were there. So they had this very serious production from the moment that we all got onto the cruise ship, where we were escorted from our own private transfer through fireworks after the ceremony or after the reception. It was very, very cool.
Where did they have their reception?
They had their reception it was in the disco, I think it was, one of the bars. That's where their dance party was. And then they had their dinner in one of the restaurants.
How many people attended their wedding?
I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it was about 65 maybe. Okay. I think. Yeah. Fairly large size for a destination wedding.
So let's kind of just focus on this wedding itself, Colette and Johnny's. How did it work room-wise? Did you guys all stay in the same spot on the ship, or how did they do that?
As far as the guest rooms?
Yeah, were they all in this kind of in the same general area, or I'm just curious how close they keep everything together.
Everybody booked their own rooms. I think that they tried to keep some of the family close together, but it all was still based on which room category you ended up booking. Colette and Johnny had one of the most incredible rooms I have ever seen on a cruise ship.
Do you know which one they stayed in?
I don't know, but it was a suite, had a gorgeous balcony, but I don't remember the exact name of it. But all of the rooms were really, really beautiful. My second photographer and I also got a balcony room. It was not a suite by any means, but it was also really gorgeous. But everybody kind of was all over the place as far as the rooms went, but everybody used the Disney app to kind of communicate. So it was never really an issue, because we could always just be okay, meet at this pool at this time. So no one really needed to be at each other's rooms too often.
Right. So I'm guessing since you have the planner, or they had their planner, they kind of had a schedule of events over the course of days as to when things were going to happen. Can you kind of step us through some of the different things that happened, from the reception to the actual wedding where it took place? And you talked about fireworks too. I'd love to hear Chrissy, I would love to hear how that got incorporated.
Yeah, absolutely. So Colette and Johnny had a rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding. They also had bachelor and bachelorette parties on the cruise. So those were sort of separate events outside of the wedding. And then the wedding day was really a lot like most wedding days, aside from the groom and groomsmen getting to go on a water slide. But the bride and bridesmaids all got ready in the salon and ended up going back to Colette's room to get dressed. So very much most wedding days. We did take some really fun photos off their balcony, which was really cool, with the bright blue Bahamas water behind them, which was gorgeous. From there, we all were shuttled over. The guests were already shuttled over to the island where they got married in Castaway Cay. There's a private little ceremony area on Castaway Cay that you can get married at, which was just gorgeous, overlooking the water. From there, we just go into photos. The family all heads back onto the cruise ship, and the bride and groom meet up with them after photos in one of the private restaurants. So the restaurant, I forget the name of it, but it was reserved specifically for the wedding, just for dinner. They had an amazing meal. And then after dinner, everyone was escorted down into it's like a disco. It was pretty cool. They had fun custom lights to make it feel like they were under the sea. It was very cool. Very Little Mermaid. The bride and groom did a choreographed dance. It was gorgeous. It was really, really cool. And so after that, after the dancing portion of the reception, everyone was ushered up to one of the sort of mezzanine levels on the top of the cruise ship for fireworks. So the fireworks were, held, obviously you can't make that private. So it was held for the entire cruise ship, on their like pirate nights, I think they usually do them. But they did section off a private area just for the guests of Colette and Johnny's wedding, which was very cool to be able to experience those without every single person on the cruise ship around them. So we were able to get some really cool photos of just Colette and Johnny together with the fireworks in the background.
That's so cool. So was the reception dinner, was that in the afternoon or was it in the evening or?
It was in the evening. It was like earlier evening. It was actually right as the
ship was leaving.
As the ship was sailing. Yeah. So as the ship was sailing, we got a gorgeous sunset. They had this little terrace off of the restaurant that we were able to go out and take some sunset photos. But yeah, it was right as the ship was leaving.
And then was it dinner first and then the reception part?
Yeah, so dinner, a couple of speeches, and then into the other, I guess, bar area. I'm sure Disney loves me calling it a bar.
They had those. So it had to have been Paolo or Remy, Steve, before like the dinner seating for Paolo and Remy occurred.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Because you couldn't take out one of the main dining rooms for that. I don't think.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
you know what? Now that you say that, their rehearsal dinner was at Remy, and then the evening reception for the wedding would have been at Paolo.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that they do some of the receptions there, and if they do the dinner early enough, then they usually are early, then they are sort of able to do this before.
For sure. They still did they still did another seating for dinner after the wedding moved into the other area. Yeah. Because they wouldn't be able to just say, sorry, everybody on this cruise ship, you just don't get one of these restaurants for the evening. They're not going to do that. But they had it early enough that everyone was still able to enjoy a beautiful dinner, but then move on into dancing. I usually say to any of my couples, you don't want to start dancing until the sun has set. No one really wants to start dancing until the sun has set. But once the sun's set, then you're golden. So in February, the sun's still setting fairly early. So as long as you have your dinner, sort of some sunset photos, and then you're able to, I think some people might have even gone and changed into some comfier clothes for the dance party, which is also the perk of having your room on the same place that you're having this wedding, is that you can go and get changed. And Colette actually had I want to say 3 outfits. Well, she had her one main wedding gown, which was a gorgeous Hayley Page gown. And then she had another custom dress made by David for Disney. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he does amazing custom gowns and outfits. So he made her dancing reception dress that actually lit up.
Well, I have seen some of this stuff from that Disney Wedding podcast, which I'm never going to have a Disney wedding, nor am I ever going to have a second, whatever those things are called, a vow renewal. But I am obsessed with this idea of these Disney parties. I don't know what it is, but yeah. So people, you got to look. These are amazing. It's unreal.
Christy, never say never.
You might be inspired.
If I don't.
You're gonna have to call up David and be like, "Hi, I need a dress that lights up because I saw this." But it was very cool. She had a grand entrance, her gown all lit up, and then actually no, she did have a third dress that was a tulle skirt overlaid on top of a bodysuit. That's what she wore for the rest of the evening from sort of fireworks on.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to not do it 100% when you're getting married on a Disney cruise. That's for sure.
So, Lindsay, what were some of your favorite spots that you got to shoot with them? What were, kind of thinking back, obviously somebody can't totally recreate what you did, but just what were some of your favorite spots that you got to shoot this couple at?
Castaway Cay is so gorgeous. I really love the Bahamas. I have a total love affair with it. And Castaway Cay is like the Bahamas, but also Disney. So really, really incredible. Honestly, anywhere on Castaway Cay was really gorgeous. But also we got some really cool photos just at sunset on the cruise ship itself. There's some really amazing stairways. And as you can imagine, for anybody that hasn't been on a Disney cruise or on a cruise at all, sunsets on a cruise are incredible because you just have the entire ocean glowing. So the entire sky, the entire ocean is just glowing. So really anywhere you're going to be during sunset is going to be pretty beautiful. But I would say, yeah, Castaway Cay was really gorgeous. The beach area, we had like a little mermaid moment. We put Colette on a rock and had her do like the Little Mermaid water splashing up thing, which is very cute. But yeah, the sunset on the cruise ship was just gorgeous.
Well, what advice would you give couples, Lindsay, that might be thinking about doing a wedding on a Disney cruise? Kind of thinking back on your experience cruising with Disney and then also being a photographer for just an incredible wedding.
I mean, anyone who is a Disney fan, a travel fan, and is also getting married, I would definitely suggest looking at a Disney cruise. They're really gorgeous. The Disney team definitely knows what they're doing. So if you want to be very well taken care of and pampered your entire wedding day and week, like that's the way to do it for sure. It's also just great to be able to spend, whether it's 4 days or 5 days or whatever it is with your entire, group of friends and family. Like that's so special. I highly, highly recommend doing destination weddings. If it works, if your family members are up for it, I think it's a wonderful idea, honestly. Obviously, there's going to be some considerations, whether or not everybody can get time off of work. And there's obviously a financial component of it. But for anyone whose family and friends also already travel, it does make it a lot easier. If your friends and family don't travel too often, it might be a little bit of a challenge to try to convince them of this. But I find that most of my couples that do destination weddings, it's because they're used to traveling with their family and friends already. So honestly, I would say definitely reach out to the Disney Weddings team. They're happy to customize things as much or as little as you'd like to. So if you want to go all out and have 3 wedding dresses and do fireworks on a mezzanine and have like just the most detailed and like detail oriented wedding ever, they're totally there for that. But if you want to hand over the reins and say, hey, like I'd like to get married, I don't have any plans other than that, you do the rest. They're also obviously quite creative and imaginative, so they could do that for you too. But yeah, I mean, as far as like planning for your vendors and stuff, Disney's going to take care of your flowers. They're going to take care of food. They're going to take care of decor. So really the only thing that you have to think about is your photo and video experience, which is entirely up to the couple, whether they want to go with someone from Disney or if they want to bring somebody else on with them.
I kind of want to know, where did they go for their honeymoon?
You know what? I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure. Lots of couples that do destination weddings, that kind of is their honeymoon. Maybe they'll do like a little mini moon or something afterwards. But when you do a wedding like that, like how do you have a honeymoon?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering.
Right? Like you don't really need a honeymoon once you've had like the most incredible travel trip experience. You might even need like a few days at home as your honeymoon to try to decompress from the week you just had. But yeah, Colette and Johnny, they had like the most incredible engagement story as well. It's also on the Disney style blog about their wedding, but they got engaged in Bora Bora. So they're definitely well-traveled.
Nice.
I kind of want to, as we kind of finish up here, kind of turn back again to, have you become a Disney bounder then?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like, I don't think that you're allowed to go to Disneyland with Leslie and not become a Disney bounder.
Could you talk about like maybe your favorite, Disney bound you've done or what? Because people get so creative in this and some are like a little, very obvious. And then some are so subtle that if you're not really paying attention, you miss it. So I was just curious what yours would be. I
think that probably my favorite Disney bound was right before we left on the cruise. We went to Disney World because I feel like you have to. It's like the whole thing. You're already in Florida. And Leslie and I Disney bounded as Belle and the Beast, which is super funny because Leslie was the Beast and she's like this tiny, cute blonde and she was the Beast. But that's the best thing about Disney bounding is that like
you can be anybody, right?
You're just putting a spin on a character with your own style, right? Which is totally how this all got started. But that was really fun. Leslie has a clothing line called Cakeworthy that is Disney-inspired clothes. She has flannels and sweaters and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. So when I'm not Disney bounding, I'm usually wearing one of those fun outfits from her clothing line. I'm very spoiled, honestly, as like a total Disney noob to get to like, hey, what should I Disney bound as? And she just like hands me a list of ideas and then also hands me a bag of clothes from her clothing line. It's very lucky.
Nice.
Yeah, living up here, I live in Portland, and so we've got Nike and Columbia, and so many of my kids' friends' parents work for them, and they're always coming home with free shirts and stuff like that. It's so being a Disney fan and having that access is so cool.
It's very cool, yeah. And like getting to see what's coming down before it's actually released is so cool. Seeing how she and her business partner come up with ideas and then actually get to shoot them and put them into production and then have them be put out there is very, very cool. And they recently got a Disney license, which was also like a huge feat for them. And I mean, obviously only took their clothing line to the next level now that they're actually fully a Disney licensed brand. Is very awesome.
Christy, are you a Disney bounder?
No, I'm not creative enough for that.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy. It's like
that's because you have a friend that dresses you.
Okay, that's fair. But like all you really have to do is go on her website and just like look at ideas. Like I wanted to be Belle, and I wanted to be Belle from when she was wearing that cute blue dress. But I was like, I'm not going to wear a dress to Disney World. So I found like a cute denim jumper and just put a white top with it and then had like a wicker basket purse as my bag. It was the simplest thing ever. Totally simple. And also super comfy.
What is her...
And once you Disney bound, everybody just like follows you around like, oh my gosh, are you Belle and the Beast? And you're like, this is so funny. Like, yeah, for sure we are. Let me just look here. I think it's the Disney bound. One sec.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? Are you a Disney bounder?
No, because I can't imagine. I'm not very creative either. But like it's totally opening my eyes and thinking about like how many people are walking through the parks trying to figure out who everybody is.
Oh yeah. Like it's all I can do now is try and figure this out. And like I'm not anywhere nearly as well versed in like Disney characters as most of the like OG Disney bounders are. Uh-huh. But the more time I spend looking at the Disney bound Instagram, the more time I'm like, okay, I can totally picture what this person is doing right now.
All right, I'm going to follow. It's pretty cute. But no, I don't envision
it could give you just have to like pull these ideas like Yoda is so simple. Like, this is so fun. She's doing like a full Star Wars set right now on her Insta, I think. She's got like a bunch of Star Wars ones going on there. I think she's breaking the rules here with some of these, but yeah, some of the Disney bound ideas are just like the cutest. I feel like I need to do Mrs. Potts next time I go. That's going to be.
Does she have any Haunted Mansion material? Because I think that would be right up my alley if I could figure out some way. Yeah.
Most definitely.
Be one of the Grim Grinny Ghosts or something like that.
Oh, for sure. That would be right up Leslie's alley. I'm sure she's got that on there.
Well, I'm gonna have to go check it out. So what's next for you, Lindsay, as far as what's your next destination shoot coming up? Can you talk about that? And my other question is now that you've been on 2 cruises, where would you like to go with Disney Cruise Line and shoot a wedding or just travel yourself?
Good question. You know what? I would love to go on the Disney Dream again, back to Castaway Cay, and just as like a regular guest on the cruise line. Because although I obviously had fun, I was working most of it. So I didn't actually get to explore Castaway Cay too much. We were kind of just shuttled around on the wedding day, and like I was wearing work clothes rather than a bathing suit. So it would be really fun. Like the beach is gorgeous. I would love to spend some time just exploring Castaway Cay a little bit more. So I think I would love to go back on that cruise again. As far as my next destination wedding, I do have a couple actually in Canada coming up in the mountains. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the geography of the area, but Ontario is not very mountainous. That's where
I was going to say it's pretty flat up there for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah. Ontario, like near Toronto where I live, is pretty flat. So whenever I get the opportunity to head to the mountains, I'm always up for that. So yeah, so my next wedding is going to be, I think it's in Kelowna actually.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Back in the Rockies. Yeah, I've been up to Kelowna actually because we had a hockey team that we used to follow. I won't get into hockey, but and they played up in Kelowna. So we did a road trip one time a long time ago up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so beautiful. I feel like the air is just different in those places.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on. For people who want to get a hold of you, how can they get in touch with you to kind of see your work? And if if somebody wanted to, book you to shoot their wedding or whatnot else, how can they find you?
For sure. So if anybody's interested in getting in touch with me, they can check me out on Instagram. My Instagram is at @LCoulterPhoto. So LCOULTER photo. And then also just my website is probably the best way to actually reach out. So lindsaycoulterphoto.com is probably the best way to see a bunch of my work and reach out if you are interested in having a destination wedding of any kind, whether it be at one of the parks or on a cruise line. I'm always up to help people through that process as well.
I wish I would have known. My brother's actually getting married next fall, and he was dying trying to find a photographer. I wish I would have, but he finally just found somebody about a month ago.
Of course.
I know.
Well, I hope that I'm sure that they're going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
There's lots of great photographers out there.
Yeah, they're getting married out in DC. So.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think just once again to give it. Your pictures are just amazing, and
they are stunning.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very blessed that I get to shoot in so many gorgeous places with such amazing people. It definitely makes my job a lot easier.
Well, thanks again, Lindsay, for coming on today. It was just such a pleasure talking to you, seeing your work, and just kind of hearing a whole experience on just what an amazing wedding that Colette and Johnny had on board the Disney Dream. So thank you so much for coming on. And when you take that trip to Castaway Cay on the Disney Dream, we'd love to have you come back on and tell us about your experience just as a passenger and just for the fun of it.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been really great.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Lindsay for coming on and sharing her experience as she photographed the beautiful wedding of Colette and Johnny's and just kind of giving us a background on what it's like to work as a photographer in the background there, sailing on a Disney cruise, and then also sharing just those fun stories of her friend Leslie and their fun as they head down to the parks Disney bounding. If you would like to get more information from Lindsay, and I will have all of this in the show notes, I'll have links for it so you can go down there if you want to look into it there. But if you want to take a look into some of Lindsay's work, she's just an amazing photographer. Once again, you can find her over at Lindsay, LINDSAY, Coulter. This is all one word, COULTER, photo.com. And you can kind of see her work and kind of her vision for photography there. And in addition, in the links below, I'll have a link for Colette and Johnny's wedding over at styledisney.com. You can find a link down there if you want to see some of those just amazing pictures that Lindsay took. And also link to Leslie Kay's site, disneybound.co, where you can see all the fun Disney bounding clothes that Leslie produces as well. So once again, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experiences. I hope all of our listeners out there really enjoyed kind of a different look at Disney Cruise Line this week. And as always, Christy and I just appreciate each and every one of you who come back and take a listen every week. We also want to remind you that we have a Patreon page that's set up, patreon.com/DCL podcast. You can go there if you would like to kind of help support the show. We sure would appreciate it. You can go over there and find out all the information that is included with becoming a Patreon member here for the DCL podcast. So between now and our next show, if you would like to get a hold of Christy and I, of course, you can always find us over at Facebook at DCL Podcast. Once again, you can find me, Steve, on Twitter at DCL Podcast and Steve at DCLpodcast.com. Of course, you can find Christy over at PackYourPixieDust.com, PackYRPixieDust on Twitter, and PackYourPixieDust as well on Facebook. So between now and our next show, if you're heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.